welcoming you to a life of awareness. The Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 39 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, sincerely, and deeply for joining me in this amazing and beautiful present moment. The title and topic for this podcast is Puppies for Presence. And this podcast has been inspired by my dear little puppy, Toby. I got Toby about 2 months ago, and it has been quite an adventure and an amazing reflection point about where I am in my journey, and especially with presence. And I wanted to share that with you, with the audience, and with everyone and anyone who has a puppy or has spent time with a puppy. It is a lot more than I ever expected. You know, Toby came into my life pretty quickly. I have been talking about getting a dog for quite a while. But, you know, I think for a long time, it was just talk. I mean, in my heart, I knew I wanted one, but I also knew that I wasn't necessarily ready for one. I really liked how clean my house was. And, you know, I kind of knew that that bringing another living being into my life would cause some kind of disruption, but I wasn't really sure of to what extent. And, you know, one day I felt a little inspired. I'm a little curious, and I went online and I started looking at animal rescues in the valley here in Phoenix. And I found one rescue that led me to another rescue that led me to another rescue. And they posted a picture of two Labrador puppies who just became available. And I've always wanted a Labrador. I've always been called to that breed. For whatever reason. I mean, whenever I would see a Labrador, a dog, there was always like a yearning. And whenever I would interact with one, I would always think that these are amazing dogs. I would love to have a Labrador in my life. So when I saw a picture of Toby and his brother, Axel, I immediately was like interested, and I contacted the rescue and I asked them when I can spend a little time with Toby, and they told me that following weekend that they were going to have an event on Saturday and Sunday. And I work on Saturdays. The clinic actually has pretty good days that day. And I asked her if I could meet Toby a day early on a Friday. And she said, no problem. Come down to the PetSmart and you can meet him. And I thought that's what it was going to be, a little meet and greet. That was actually my intention. Actually, maybe it was really more of an intention was to meet Toby, just to see who he was and get a feel for it. So I went down there, I worked half a day, and then I drove over to Chandler and I found the PetSmart, and I walked in there and I walked around for a little bit because I was a little early, and I was just looking at the different toys and accessories, and there's a lot for pet owners. It is not a cheap experience by any means. And I found that out later. And so I walked back outside and I see this woman carrying a puppy, a Labrador puppy. And I immediately knew, I said, that's Toby. And she handed me Toby while we were standing outside PetSmart. And I kind of knew. I was like, oh, okay. I like this guy. But at the same time, my intention in that moment was to have a meet and greet, was to just meet Toby, just to say hi to Toby. At least that's what I thought. So the woman from the rescue shows up about 10 minutes later, and I'm still holding Toby. And you can't put him on the floor because he wasn't fully vaccinated, so I had to hold him for those 10 minutes. And, you know, he was quiet, very docile. And I immediately started falling for him in an interesting way. So the woman from the rescue starts asking me some questions, and she asks me if I want to fill out an application. And I immediately think, okay, well, I'll fill out this application and it's going to take a couple days to get processed, and she's got to run a background check and whatever. So I fill it out, and she goes to the back. I don't know where she goes. And then she comes back 5 minutes later and tells me, she's like, oh, you're approved. And I'm a little in shock. I really don't know how to respond. And the next few minutes after that actually are a blur. Because what happens is that I hand over my credit card, I pay the adoption fee, and she hands me Toby and says, here you go. And it happens so quickly. And sometimes I look at the picture she took of me holding Toby, and I'm just like, I'm in a daze. I just couldn't really believe what was happening. It happened so quickly. And maybe I just, in that moment, I just wasn't being present, or maybe I was being so present that I couldn't process what was taking place, but it happened that quickly. And all of a sudden I had a puppy, and I had to shop and buy all the stuff that new dog owners need, because I had absolutely nothing. And I bought a lot of stuff, probably too much stuff. And before I knew it, I was packing up my car, and I put Toby in the front seat, and I got in, and the first thing he did as soon as I closed the door was start crying and try to leave. And I in that present moment, I felt a lot of concern, to say the very least. And I drove home, trying to reassure Toby that everything was going to be okay. And then I was trying to reassure myself that everything was going to be okay. But it was a lot. That was a very overwhelming moment for me. There was a lot of unknown, and I didn't really do my homework about what a puppy would be like, especially a Labrador. Maybe that was for a reason, because if I did, I might not have done it, to be honest with you. Having a puppy has been intense, to say the very least. So I took Toby home, and I brought him in the house, and the first thing he did was poop right on my carpet. It happened in the first minute. And that's when I knew that this was going to be a challenging experience for me. And for the most part, it has been. It's been very rewarding. And having a puppy has taught me time and time again that I need to be extremely present and patient with this living being. He never thinks about the past or worries about the future. And I've seen that with him time and time again. And he has been constantly pulling me back into the present moment, challenge after challenge after challenge. I mean, housebreaking him it happened pretty quickly, but I have to tell everyone that there has been nothing more of a shock to my system than having this guy poop and pee on the floor in my house. And that happened, the pooping only happened one time, but the peeing happened quite a few times until he figured out that he needs to do that outside. And that, I had to be very vigilant and very present and very observant for his signs. And I had to take him out over and over and over again and praise him whenever he did actually pee or poop outside, until he got the idea that, yes, that is where we do these things. And I couldn't have ever imagined the level of challenge it has taken me to get to this point. And, 2 months in, and we're still learning from each other. But through it all, Toby has been one of the greatest presence tools I have ever had. He has taught me more about myself and more about, where I am and who I am than I can ever remember. And, I love this guy. I really do. I can't say that I loved him from the beginning, because it's hard to love a little puppy that's peeing all over the place, that's crying, that is extremely needy. And, he had separation anxiety for a little while, and I had to, one of the better things that I did, actually one of the best things that I did, was crate train him. That actually set the tone for our relationship, so he knows where he belongs. But, the first few nights of him being in that crate were quite a challenge for me. I'm not used to listening to crying and whining and howling. And, he would do that for quite a while. And I had to really check myself. And there were quite a few people that I had to reach out to and get support. And when we're really being challenged in those moments, it's important to ask for help. And that's something that I realized, is that I needed other people's help. I needed help for him, and I needed help for me so that I could be there for him. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to share my experiences, and there have been a lot more experiences than that, is that, animals, puppies, cats, any kind of pet really, like, they exist solely for the moment. That's it. Plain and simple. And, it's one thing to visit a cat or a puppy or a dog, and it's another thing to live with them. It's like a whole different ball game. I mean, I would love to visit a puppy and then leave. I think it's the same thing for when people have babies. I mean, it's nice to visit a baby and hold a baby, and until the baby starts crying, it's great. And then when the baby starts crying or having a meltdown or whatever it is, you just hand the baby off and you leave. It's a little different when the baby's yours or the puppy's yours or the kitten's yours. It's like, no, you're there. And it is definitely a gut check, because, your instincts are like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want this. This is not making me happy. But then, if you're being really present, you remember that everything is constantly changing. Everything is shifting. And if you can hang in there long enough, and you could be consistent long enough and persistent, then things will work out. And that's ultimately what I believe puppies need, dogs need, is persistence and consistency. And so that they know what to expect from you, and you know what to expect from them. And there's a lot of variables that come up. And, one of the things that I've had some issues with him has been walking on a leash. He has not done well in the beginning, and it really challenged me every single time, because all I really wanted was to have a nice walk. And he would dart all over the place. He wanted to smell. He wanted to pee. He was distracted. And it pulled me out of the present moment over and over again, because I kept on thinking about, like, it's never going to happen. He's never going to want to walk on leash with me. This is never going to work. And it took a few times for me to, like, really catch myself and stop and, like, start doing my research into, like, what I was doing wrong, because it's not what he was doing wrong. It was what I was doing wrong and what I needed to do differently. And the only way that I was able to see that was through clarity. And the only way for me to achieve clarity was to achieve presence. And to be honest with everyone, like, I got pulled out a couple times, and I got frustrated, and then I got upset. And I think that, that's a natural humanistic response for anyone put in that situation, because it's just me and Toby. And there were moments where I was like, I just couldn't believe what was happening. But then I was doing my meditations. I was asking for help. I was doing my affirmations. Then I started watching videos, and I started researching, issues that other people were having and tools that other people were using for walking their dogs. And, I started to try all these different tools and these different methodologies, and it actually clicked in, and I figured it out. And it doesn't mean that, like, it's done, but, like, our walks are a million times better, and I feel a million times better about it, about him walking nicely with me. But I feel really good about the fact that, eventually I was able to be so present that I had the clarity that I needed to make the changes that I needed, that I didn't allow that fear state to overcome me, to overcome my vision of us, of the way that I wanted us to interact. Because again, it's not always about, the other living being. It's about you and what you're doing in that moment to create that experience. So it wasn't until I changed the way I saw things and the way I was behaving that he also changed as well. And so, how can you ask for a bigger or better presence tool than that? So powerful. I mean, it's such a blessing. He's such a blessing. And we're only a few months in, but I got to tell you that this has been such a worthy and worthwhile experience. And every day that I get to spend with him is a day that I'm just I'm in total grace and just a state of deep gratitude for the learning that the universe has bestowed upon me about this little guy. We have a long time together, many years, but I don't really have to think about what it's going to be like in the future. I just have to stay in the present, and with Toby's help, he'll just keep pulling me back into the present moment. It's not like I have a choice. But you know what? I actually do have a choice, and I'm going to join him and meet him in the present moment. I'm going to remember that I need to have the clarity necessary to see him for who he is, where he is, and how he is, so that I can show up fully. I can show up presently. I can let go of my fears and worries about the future, and I can let go of the past when he was doing things that weren't in accordance with how I wanted to live my life. Because in those moments, he was just living his life, and it didn't exactly vibe with the way that I wanted him to be, but he couldn't understand that. How could he, So, this is actually a really important podcast. It's an important podcast for everyone listening, but for me too, to kind of process this with you guys so that, you can understand that, there are moments where my present moment unravels and that I get frustrated and that I have to look in the mirror and I have to pull myself aside and have a conversation with myself, that I have to make important decisions, that I have to look at the experience as a whole and ask myself, is this what I want? Am I being present in this moment? Am I showing the understanding, compassion, and clarity necessary in this moment to be the best I can be for Toby, but more so for myself? And I'm not saying that you necessarily need a puppy to achieve that level of presence, this level of presence. You really don't. I mean, it could be achieved in a variety of ways. But right now, this is the way that I'm doing it. So, Puppies for Presence seems to be a very appropriate title for this podcast, but it's actually a very appropriate title for this period in my life right now, because I feel like, if anything, Toby is one of my greatest teachers. He is a reminder of where I'm at and what I'm doing and how I'm saying and how I'm feeling about him, about myself, about the experience, about living with this other amazing being. And that's the reflection point. That's what's important for us to look at. And so if you have the opportunity, do so. If you've been thinking about a puppy, I would really urge you to do your homework first and foremost. Speak to other people who have had puppies, and if you can find more information about the breed that you're interested in, I urge you to do a little bit of homework on that. Turns out that Labradors, especially puppies, have a tremendous amount of energy, and that energy needs to be exerted in some way, shape, or form. So I didn't know that before. But I know that now, and I'm doing my best in each present moment to help him so that he can exert that energy in a productive way and not a destructive way, because the energy needs to go somewhere. I also urge you to work with trainers. I've worked with a few, not just one. And one of my good friends is also a dog trainer, and we've been working together closely. Everyone has a different methodology, so you're going to start forming your own, especially if you've never had a puppy before. There's a really sharp and steep learning curve. And you're going to want to learn as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because it could get really overwhelming fast if you don't adapt. And the only way that you can truly adapt to a situation like this is if you can be present, if you could be in the moment, if you can enter into that deepest state of acceptance and allowance for the shift that's taking place. Because when I'm with Toby, when we're together and we're both like getting along and loving each other, like I enter this state, this like flow state. And, in a future podcast, I'm going to want to go a little bit deeper into the flow state, but like that flow state is like the deepest state of presence, is that I'm just in that moment with him. He's in that moment with me, and we're just like being. We're not thinking about what's going to happen later. We're not thinking about what happened before. We let all that go. And that is such that by itself is such a blessing. So there it is, everyone. That's what's been going on with me for the past few months. I have a puppy. His name is Toby. He is adorable. He's a challenge at times, but so am I. And he has been, it's been an amazing experience. And if there's anyone out there who ever wants to puppy sit, I have an amazing Labrador puppy who would love to channel some energy with you. If not, I understand that too. But I'm so happy and grateful to share these experiences with you. Hopefully it doesn't discourage you from getting a puppy. If anything, it should encourage you to get one, but also to be ready. In those moments, even though I didn't know it, and even though I didn't expect it, like it was the right time for me. And it happened. And there's no going back. There's no giving up. There's only a level of acceptance with an understanding that I will figure it out. And there have been moments where to be honest with everyone, there have been moments that I have thought about like giving up because it has been that hard. But they're only moments, and I'm only human, and that's okay because I pull myself out of that. I remind myself who I am. I use a presence tool, and I move on. And, that's the methodology. That's the way. Because you're not going to always be present. It's just not possible. There's going to be experiences that are going to pull you right out. The reflection point is how quickly, how seamlessly can you pull yourself right back in? So I think that's about it. I want to thank everyone for listening. This has been a beautiful podcast, and I feel very grateful to share this information. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me, and I want to welcome you and everyone back to the present moment.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.